What's good, YouTube? It's Maribus back in the next video. The OCGs reversed yet another ruling today, and this one actually blew my mind. Okay, so today, the OCG R&D came out with a series of rulings updates that were mostly clarifications for existing rulings for newer cards. Nothing changed, except for this one ruling that got reversed, and it actually defies the entire logics of existing Yu-Gi-Oh! The little bit of sense that Yu-Gi-Oh! Previously had in a ruling has now been taken and crushed completely and reversed by Konami R&D. Here's what I mean. Now, this has to do with modal card effects. So you guys know the card effects where you can pay a cost and then you choose one of the effects to activate. Well, this is what it pertains to. And in the example they gave, they say, can I target an Xyz material detached as a cost from Daigusto Emerald as a card to return to the deck? Well, everyone knows you can. And for those guys that don't know, Daigusto Emerald says detach a material. You can target 3 monsters in your graveyard, shuffle them back to the deck, and then draw a card, right? Everyone knows you can do that as long as you have 3 monsters in your graveyard. But now this new ruling says you do not have to have the 3 monsters in your graveyard as a legal activation anymore, as long as the other mode of the card effect is legally able to be activated. So, okay, we'll dive in deeper so you guys can know what this means. It's a little bit confusing, but it says, can I target a monster detached as Xyz material for the activation cost and sent to the graveyard with the first effect of Daigusto Emerald? Also, if I only have 2 monsters in my graveyard, can I activate the first effect of Daigusto Emerald by detaching a monster card among its Xyz materials? And the answer says, when activating the effect of Daigusto Emerald, first detach an Xyz material as its cost, then select which effect to activate and the card it targets. So they're dissociating the cost with the selection of the effect. Now, they're 2 separate things. Although they happen at the same time, it's almost like sequential. Previously, they had to activate at the exact moment. To detach for the cost, you have to have a legal activation in your graveyard, for example, to target to be able to do that. But now this is where it changes, okay? It says, if you only have 2 monsters in your graveyard and both of them are effect monsters, this effect cannot be activated because you do not have the appropriate monsters in your graveyard to target for either effect, okay? So that's like the existing ruling that we have. However, if at least one of the 2 materials in the graveyard is a non-effect monster, the second effect is now able to be activated, and an Xyz material can be detached as a cost. If the detached material is a monster card sent to the graveyard, you can now have 3 monsters in your graveyard and select and activate the first effect instead of the second effect. So yes, Daigusto Emerald has 2 modes. The first one allows you to detach to shuffle back 3 monsters to the deck, draw a card. The second one says you detach one to target a non-effect monster in your graveyard and special summon it back to the field. But now it's saying that you're first paying the cost and then you're choosing which mode to activate, meaning that you can essentially be able to legally activate that effect by paying the cost. So you're going to be legally activating the mode where you have a non-effect monster in your graveyard, even though you don't have 3 monsters in your graveyard. Now you do after paying the cost from detaching, so you can now select the first effect when you're originally only activating legally for the second effect, which was to resurrect the monster. So this is really, really crazy, and they double up by having another ruling for the Shiranui Synthesis, which is a spell card that says once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, then activate one of these effects. 2 bullet points. The first one that says, target 1 zombie monster with 0 defense in your graveyard, special summon it. And the second effect, bullet point, is target 1 of your banished zombie monsters with 0 defense, return it to the graveyard. You can only use this effect once per turn. So it says, if I have 1 banished zombie monster with 0 defense, but no zombie monsters with 0 defense in my graveyard, in this situation, can I send a zombie monster with 0 defense from my hand to the graveyard as a cost to activate the effect of Shiranui Synthesis? And then can I select the first bullet point effect and target that monster when I was originally only legally activating for the second bullet point? And the answer is yes, you can. When activating the effect of Shiranui Synthesis, first send a card from your hand to the graveyard as its cost, then select which effect to activate and the card that it targets. In this scenario, since you have a banished zombie monster with 0 defense, the second bullet point effect is able to be activated, so you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard as a cost. If you send a zombie monster with 0 defense to the graveyard, you will now have a monster in your graveyard to target with the first bullet point, so you can select and activate that effect. This is really, really crazy. It's essentially a ruling reversal for multiple choice modo type effects, right? Previously, you can only activate Daigusto Emerald's first effect if you had 3 monsters already in the graveyard, though you were still able to target a monster that was detached. Now, as long as one of the two effects can be activated, you can activate the effect by detaching and then choosing a legal effect, even if it's not the same legal effect that was originally legal for the activation and paying the cost. The same concept applies to Shiranui style synthesis, but this does not change the overall rule for non-modal, for non-bullet point effects like Lumina or Zombie Master that say, you can discard a card from your graveyard to target a Light Sworn monster or a zombie monster in your graveyard and special summon it. If you did not already have a legal target, aka a Light Sworn monster in the case of Illumina, or a zombie monster in the case of Zombie Master, you cannot just send a zombie monster from your hand and try to resurrect that. You had to have already had a legal target. That doesn't change at all. This only pertains to modal effects. Now, if you're able to activate one of the effects, you can equally be able to activate the second effect upon resolution, provided that second effect meets its requirements upon the paying of the cost. So this is actually especially critical for cards like the Garrus, which now are legally being able to activate any of its effects because it's basically always live, right? Why is this relevant to the Garrus? Well, this actually gives it a huge buff. Now, previously you could not use the second effect where you skip your next main phase and special summon a monster from your graveyard when you do not have any monsters in your graveyard, right? If you just special summon out the Garrus and you have an empty graveyard, you could not use that effect. But now it's saying because it has the first effect where you skip your draw phase and you're able to draw 2 cards and discard a card, which would have been a legal activation even if we had no graveyard, what we can actually do now is pay the cost by detaching 2 materials, and then instead of drawing 2 and discarding 1, we can say, hey, we paid the cost, we have graveyard monsters in our graveyard now, so we can activate the second effect to resurrect one of the detached materials instead of being forced to draw 2 cards. So this is a huge buff because now using any strategy that puts on 2 monsters on the field and making a rank 4 without having a graveyard, for example, the Super Heavy Samurai stuff maybe, Wikoshi or whatever, you can now detach them and resurrect one of the detached monsters, which is really a huge buff to effects like this that previously you had to meet the requirement. It was really hard for Daigusto Emerald to shuffle back cards when you only had 2 cards in your graveyard, but now this is legal, and that could be game breaking for a lot of effects that are modal like this, and it's very cool. I think that they're doing this. I'm not sure if it's good or bad for the game, honestly. I think it's interesting that they're reversing this ruling because as Yu-Gi-Oh players, we've all been conditioned to know that legal activations means that you have to have legal activation requirements in the graveyard or whatever the heck you want to legally activate the card. But this completely undermines it and says, hey guys, costs are now separate. As long as you're able to activate one of the Moto effects, you can now activate the other one upon paying the cost. I just think this is absolutely crazy. What do you guys think about this ruling? Is this something that you think will actually hurt the game? It has not come to the TCG yet. Bear in mind, this is OCG only. I should have mentioned in the beginning of this video, but this is only for the OCG. But I imagine this will eventually come to the TCG in one shape or another. So do you guys think this will be detrimental to the TCG, or do you think this will actually be helpful, especially from a logic standpoint? I mean, I've been conditioned as a Yu-Gi-Oh player to think that you're supposed to just activate legally, but you cannot do this under cost, but this completely changes everything. So I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Let us know. Other than that, we'll see you guys in the next video. I'm still kind of blown away by this ruling, but yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.